Are they deaf or delusional? Just what is it that the liberals don't understand about this impeachment farce against Donald Trump? Well, now that the national public embarrassment known as the Schiff Circus, the faux pas, phony impeachment hearings have mercifully come to an end, there are those in the liberal mainstream media that don't understand why, number one, the polls are definitely shifting in Trump's favor. They don't understand why they're losing independents. They don't understand why the GOP is not rising up against Donald Trump. After all, he's guilty, guilty, guilty. What don't you understand? And this is what's being expressed by the lying legacy corporate corrupt mainstream media. It's what's being expressed by Democrats, even though behind closed doors the media and the Democrats know, again, this is as phony as Russian collusion. So just what is it that the average liberal doesn't get? Are they just completely deaf, or are they totally delusional? I give you the nags on The View.
An impeachable offense should be compelling, overwhelmingly clear, and unambiguous, and it's not something to be rushed or taken lightly. I've not heard evidence proving the president committed bribery or extortion.
Well, is he deaf? He must be deaf. He says he hasn't heard it. We all heard it. He's deaf.
I think I was shocked to hear Will Hurd say that. In my view, it says more about Will Hurd than it says about the evidence. I think that anyone that was listening heard nine people testify as to what they saw, as to what they heard.
Will Hurd is a middle-of-the-road, moderate Republican, a rhino, or as I like to say, a Democrat dressed in Republican drag. He's not up for re-election. He's definitely not a Trump supporter. And everyone was counting on the fact, and I'm talking about on the Democratic side of the aisle, the mainstream media, they had been talking about this over at Airport Terminal TV, formerly known as CNN, that Hurd was the guy on the GOP side that they thought they were going to flip for a vote of impeachment and bringing up these articles of impeachment which are being talked about in the Schiff circles. This is what they were counting on. And you should have seen the deflated dejection on CNN when Will Hurd said, I'm sorry, what I have heard, it does not rise to the level of impeachment. And basically, all we've got is a bunch of hearsay. And Joy, not a babe heart, and the rest of the nags over there on The View, just their heads exploded. What is he not hearing? Is he deaf? No, he's not deaf, but apparently you are. And most Democrats are. And the reason you're deaf is you have such a visceral hatred for this man, Donald J. Trump, that you are suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. And you're not listening. You have allowed all sense of reason and logic to just absolutely be checked out, and you have bought into these spoon-fed narratives day after day for 3 years. Russia, 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 collusion, collusion, collusion. The walls are caving in. This is it. We got them. We've got the overwhelming evidence. Aren't you sick and tired of being lied to by the members of your own party? Aren't you sick and tired of being lied to by the legacy, corporate, corrupt, mainstream propaganda media? Aren't you just absolutely sick of it? But you see, you're so filled with a visceral hatred of Donald Trump, and in actuality, you can't actually point to a policy of his that you have a strong disagreement with. You certainly have to like what the economy is doing right now. Okay, we got it. You don't like the wall, and he's caging children. The caging began under the Barack-Obama administration. He didn't build those cages. Barack did. The wall does work. We know you've bought into this phony narrative that we shouldn't have walls, anybody should just be able to come in, but yet you won't answer honestly, how do we deal with not only the drugs coming in, but the fact that we've got human sex trafficking and just absolute violation of human rights happening as people cross illegally into this nation? How do you want to deal with any of that? Now, see, that you don't want to talk about. As you declare your cities sanctuary cities, and now you're overrun with homelessness, and you've got tent cities going on, and people defecating in the streets. Gee, when that happened under the Hoover administration, that was his ticket out and the ushering in of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And he fixed the Great Depression. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. But what he did do was use the strong arm of the law to sweep out Central Park of Hooverville to get the undesirables and the homeless and the hobos out of the eye of the American people. World War II and the boom that was created by factories and industry needing to gear up for a war effort is what pulled us out of the Great Depression, not Franklin D. Roosevelt. And it's a complete rewriting of history. I can't stand that. That said, as you Democrats, you have just given in to this hatred of Donald Trump. The fact that people have made accusations and they've claimed to heard this and heard that, again, what trumps everything is a thing called evidence, facts. And the evidence of the facts lie with Donald Trump. The release of the transcript of the phone call. No prid quo pro. None. Bribery? Not even close. And we'll get to that in a few minutes. It's sad when there are progressives on the left side of the aisle. They do get this. They understand exactly what's happening here. Jimmy Dore, who is certainly no conservative, no friend of the Trump administration, one-time commentator, I'm not even quite sure what his title was, commentator, news observer, whatever, with the Young Turks. The Young Turks, without a doubt, the most libloon, progressive voice in alternative media. And, you know, they never get censored by YouTube. In fact, YouTube is constantly propping up their algorithm so that they do appear at the top of search engines. In fact, Google even gave them millions of dollars to develop the Young Turks channel. Jimmy Dore was associated with that, and he pulled out because he couldn't tolerate their propaganda BS in the other direction. He couldn't buy into the whole Russia, Russia, Russia. And he and some really, what you would call true progressives, they understand the lie and the propaganda behind this. And Jimmy Dore is actually trying to point out to Democrats why you're wrong.
That these are the headlines in the Huffington Post. Bombshell. But in the real world, this is what's happening. In poll, independents lead sharp swing in opposition to Trump impeachment. And as Kyle Kalinske says, so you mean Ambassador Griggins-Florp explaining what he heard under Secretary Schmagenin's friends heard isn't the bombshell we were told? So he's making fun of the whole thing. And so when the Huffington Post says this is a bombshell, he says we were only following the president's orders. The problem with that is he was interpreting what the president said. The president never told him anything, Sondland. In fact, as Michael Tracy points out, no one told me directly that the aid was tied to anything. I was presuming it was. This is their bombshell. A guy who says, I was presuming it was. So I'm not kidding. If you turn on the media, you turn on CNN or MSNBC or the Washington Post or Huffington Post, they're bombed. This is it, Sondland, man. And everybody on Twitter, man, oh, man. It's like, again, it's the same thing with Russiagate. They got him. Walls are closing in. They got him. And we knew they didn't. And here's what he actually said. Here's what Sondland actually said. No one told me directly that aid was tied to anything. I was presuming it was, Sondland says. And then Michael Tracy says, well, maybe the aid was in fact tied to something, but this testimony doesn't provide any direct evidence for that presumption. And he goes on to say, Sondland says he's presuming that Ukraine military aid was conditioned on the announcement of the 2016 Burisma investigation. A presumption is a tad different than direct evidence. This is, again, but you see how look how they reported. Bombshell. They got him.
Well, there you have it. No facts, no evidence. But wait a minute. Joy, not a babe heart, over on The View. Hey, we're talking about bribery here, and that's been proven.
In the Constitution, you can correct me.
I
believe bribery is listed as one of the impeachable offenses by the founding fathers.
I have had many areas of responsibility, leadership. I have served as a salesman, as a sales manager, as a marketing director. I have been a school administrator of 3 different schools. I have been the senior pastor of 2 churches. I have been the associate pastor of 2 churches. And in between all of that, on top of doing radio in every genre you can imagine, from Christian radio to rock radio to talk radio, but the only thing I haven't done is country. Thank God. No offense to you country music fans. It's just not my forte. That said, I have spent 18 years in classrooms teaching history, American history. And I want to just challenge parents. You are going to have to sit down and have real serious talks with your children about what they're being spoon-fed in revisionist history and the American public school system, which is not a public school. If it was a public school, your opinion would be wanted and welcomed. And it's not. It's a government school. It's an indoctrination center. And you ought to really pull your kids out of there. But that's a different monologue, a different sermon for a different day. But having taught 18 years in the classroom American history, let me give you a little history lesson on bribery being an impeachable offense committed by the president. To understand what our founding fathers meant with that, first of all, we have to get the modern definition of bribery out of our heads. They weren't talking about the kind of bribery that Adam Schiff and Joy Not a Babeheart is talking about, which Donald Trump didn't even commit anyway. Because again, it's, well, we thought this is what he wanted. Your thoughts, again, did he withhold money until Ukraine reopened the investigation and publicly said they were investigating Hunter Biden? No. They never reopened the investigation. They are not investigating Hunter Biden. They made no such public announcement. And did they get their military aid? Every dime of it. Did the Obama administration ever give Ukraine military aid? Never. And when Joe Biden said, you won't get your $1 billion unless you fire this prosecutor looking into my son, even after they fired him, they still didn't get their $1 million from the Obama administration. Now there's some quid pro quo and bribery. But moving back to Donald Trump and trying to educate Joy Not a Babeheart and the nags at The View. The U.S. Constitution was ratified on June the 21st, 1788. Do you know when the first law actually appeared on the books regarding bribery? 1789. 1 year after the Constitution had already been ratified. So bribery wasn't even a law on the books until a year after the Constitution was ratified. So what were the framers, our founding fathers, what were they talking about when they were referring to an impeachable offense? It goes beyond this idea of, if you do this favor for me and my personal benefit, I will, in the name of the United States, do a favor for you. That's not what they were talking about there. What they were so concerned with, here we were, this fledgling nation, barely 12 years old. And they were so worried that there were still enough of the Tories around, there were enough sympathizers to the crown around, that it could very well be they could actually elect a Trojan horse who would reunite them with England, who would do a backdoor deal and for his own personal gain and wealth literally sell out the United States and our sovereignty to foreign control. That's what they were talking about when they said bribery. Has Donald Trump sold us out to foreign control? And remember, the same people that are trying to now insinuate, yeah, Russia. Really? Really? He has slapped Russia with more sanctions than Barack Obama ever did. He has forced Russia to back down in areas that Obama never did. In fact, I can make a stronger case that Obama was in bed with Putin. Obama, who denuclearized the Ukraine so that Croatia could be overrun like a Nazi blitzkrieg by Russia. Obama, who made the case that not one dime of military aid was going to go to Ukraine, and people like Fiona Hill, who was a star witness against Trump this week in the impeachment farce, actually in 2015 wrote an article defending Barack Obama not giving Ukraine any money. Yet she turns around in these impeachment hearings and talks about how imperative it was that Trump give that aid and that we as an American nation give that aid to Ukraine to stop and to thwart the Russians. Are any of you paying attention to this BS that gets flung at us every day? That said, the same people accusing the president now of bribery are also, he's going to absolutely destroy our economy with this trade war he is going on with China that he's winning. What is it that he doesn't want China to be able to do? Control America. What is it that he's doing when he tells NATO and some of these other foreign organizations and entities to go pound sand and start paying their fair share? America first. That's not selling out our sovereignty. That's reinforcing our sovereignty. This president is the polar opposite of the constitutional definition of bribery for removing a president. But again, you would have to have an actual understanding of history, real history, not revisionist history, to know what's being said in the Constitution, in the articles regarding removing a president from office. And don't listen to the so-called legal experts that Airport Terminal TV and even faux pas news, formerly known as Fox News, with their Judge Napataliano. Don't listen to any of these buffoons and these absolute purveyors of disinformation. I understand why the average Democrat is foaming at the mouth, believing that this time, finally, we're going to impeach the president, because they've been lied to. But the actual individuals in power, the Nancy Botox Pelosi's, they know this whole thing is a lie. A lie, a lie. And I can only hope that their place in hell is far hotter than even Adolf Hitler's. Well, what'd you think of this rant? Hey, give us a thumbs up and a like, share this one everywhere, and make sure you share this with your liberal friends. Please. Information, it's a wonderful thing. Truth is a great weapon against lies and against idiocy. In fact, knowledge has pretty much been guaranteed to prove it can eradicate stupidity. That said, make sure you subscribe to the channel, smack the bell, and do everything you can to get the word out, because we know YouTube won't promote us.